I was standing at the head of a mahogany conference table, 20 of the most powerful CEOs in North America watching me present, when my own boss walked in, slid a termination letter across the table, and told security to walk me out. If you believe karma never forgets an address, hit that subscribe button. And if you've ever been stabbed in the back at work, keep reading. My name is Renata Voss. 3 years ago, I was the Senior Vice President of Global Partnerships at Meridian Holdings, a Fortune 200 conglomerate with its claws deep in energy, infrastructure, and defense contracting. I was 41, a single mother raising twin boys, and I had dragged myself up from an unpaid internship in a basement office to running deals that moved billions across borders. The $2.4 billion deal was my baby. 18 months of grinding, flights to 14 cities, sleepless nights drafting partnership frameworks while my boys slept in the next room, phone calls at 3 a.m. with legal teams scattered across 4 time zones. I personally courted every single one of those 20 CEOs. I knew their kids' names. I knew what bourbon they sipped. I knew which ones needed their ego stroked and which ones only responded to cold, hard projections. The deal itself was a multi-sector green energy consortium, 20 companies pooling resources to build the largest renewable infrastructure network across the eastern seaboard. Each company had signed a memorandum of understanding tied directly to Meridian Holdings, and more specifically, tied to me personally. My name was printed on every single MOU as the primary liaison and project guarantor. My boss, Darren Whitfield, was Meridian's CEO. He hired me 9 years earlier, told me I was brilliant, said I reminded him of his own daughter, told me I had a future at this company most folks couldn't even dream about. And stupid, trusting me, I swallowed every single word. What I didn't know was that Darren had been quietly cutting a separate side deal with a competing consortium overseas, an arrangement that would have stuffed $38 million in consulting fees into his personal accounts after retirement. But my deal, the $2.4 billion one, stood directly in the way. If my consortium went through, his little backroom handshake crumbled to dust. So he did what gutless men always do. He waited for the worst possible moment to strike. The signing ceremony was at the Ritz-Carlton in Manhattan. I'd booked the grand ballroom myself. 20 CEOs, their legal teams, press coverage, photographers, the whole 9 yards. I wore my lucky navy suit, the one I bought to celebrate closing my first $100 million deal. That morning, my boys had drawn me a good luck card with little rockets all over it. I tucked it in my blazer, right over my heart. I was mid-sentence, literally in the middle of walking the room through our 5-year implementation timeline, laser pointer aimed at the projection screen, when the ballroom doors swung open like someone kicked them. Darren strolled in with 2 uniformed security guards and Helen Park, our head of HR. The room went dead quiet. Forks stopped clinking, pens froze mid-air. I smiled at first, honestly thought he was making a surprise appearance to shake hands and play the big boss role at the biggest deal in company history. Instead, he walked right up to me, stone-faced, and slid a manila envelope across the polished table. I stared down at it, then back at him. What is this? Your termination, effective immediately. Please collect your personal belongings. Security will escort you out of the building. My brain just glitched. I ain't being dramatic. I genuinely could not process what was unfolding. 20 CEOs gawking at me, their lawyers frozen with signing pens in hand. We were literally 15 minutes from final signatures on a deal I'd built from nothing. Darren, what the hell are you? This isn't a discussion, Renata. Your position has been eliminated. HR will follow up regarding severance details. Helen wouldn't even look at me. She stood there staring at the carpet like it owed her rent money. My face burned so hot I thought my skin might peel off. Not from shame, from rage. Pure, volcanic, bone-deep fury. But I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I picked up that envelope, looked around at the room full of people I had poured my soul into building relationships with, and said quietly, I apologize. It appears I've been let go. Then I turned around and walked out, head high, hands trembling at my sides. The younger security guard, a kid named Terrence, whispered to me inside the elevator, Ma'am, for what it's worth, that was the most jacked up thing I've ever seen happen in this building, and I've seen a lot. I made it to the parking garage before I completely fell apart. Sat in my Honda Accord for almost an hour. Couldn't drive. My hands were shaking so violently I couldn't grip the wheel. Called my mom. No answer. Called my sister. Voicemail. So I just sat there, alone in that freezing garage, in my lucky navy suit, clutching my boy's little rocket card, and cried until my ribs ached. That night, I heated up chicken nuggets for my twins and pretended everything was normal. They asked why I was home early. I told them Mommy got a vacation. Then I locked myself in the bathroom and threw up. Here's what people don't understand about MOUs. They're built on trust, not just paper. Every single one of those 20 CEOs signed their memorandums based on their personal relationship with me. Not Meridian Holdings, not Darren Whitfield. Me. My word, my handshake, my late-night phone calls, and my follow-through. Within 72 hours, all 20 companies voided their MOUs. Every last one. The $2.4 billion consortium collapsed like wet cardboard. Meridian's stock tanked 11% in 1 week. The board launched an emergency internal investigation. Darren scrambled for damage control, but those CEOs wouldn't return his calls. Not a single one. Meanwhile, I was sitting cross-legged on my apartment floor in Jersey City, filling out unemployment paperwork, Googling how long Cobra health coverage lasted, trying to figure out how to explain to my 8-year-old boys why Mommy wasn't going to the office anymore. 3 weeks of silence. 3 weeks of doom-scrolling job boards and questioning every decision I'd ever made. Then my phone rang with a number I recognized. Marcus Langley, CEO of Trident Energy, one of the 20 from the signing ceremony. He didn't call through an assistant. He called my personal cell. Renata, I've been doing this 30-plus years. I have never in my life seen someone get done that dirty. But I want you to hear something. I didn't sign that MOU because of Meridian Holdings. I signed it because of you. Period. Different tears this time, the kind that crack your chest open and let something warm back in. Over the next 2 weeks, 6 more CEOs reached out independently. Same message. They still wanted the consortium, they still believed in the deal, but they wanted me running it. Not Meridian, not Darren, not some corporate machine that eats its own people alive without flinching. Problem was, I had nothing. No company, no office, no business cards, no revenue. I had a beat-up laptop, a kitchen table covered with Lego bricks, and 2 little boys who needed their mom to hold it together. So I did the most terrifying thing I've ever done. I filed incorporation papers for my own firm, named it Voss Strategic Partners. My sister wired me $11,000 from her savings. My mama drove up from Virginia to watch the boys while I pulled 20-hour days, rebuilding every framework from the ground up. 5 months. 5 brutal, soul-crushing, caffeine-fueled months of negotiations, legal reviews, and cold sweats at 2 a.m., wondering if I was delusional. But I restructured that consortium under my own banner. 13 of the original 20 CEOs signed brand new MOUs, directly with me. The deal landed at $1.8 billion. Smaller than before, sure, but it was mine. Every cent of it. Mine. And Darren Whitfield? Oh, honey, karma didn't just knock on his door. Karma moved in, unpacked its suitcases, and started redecorating. The board's investigation uncovered everything. The $38 million in undisclosed consulting kickbacks, the conflicts of interest, falsified compliance documents. He was terminated for cause. No severance, no golden parachute, no dignity. The SEC opened a formal inquiry. Last I heard, he's staring down potential securities fraud charges, and his wife filed for divorce. Helen from HR? She emailed me 8 months later asking if I was hiring. I left her on red. Still haven't opened it. Terrence, the security guard? I hired him. He manages building operations at my new Midtown office, and he's damn good at it. My boys still don't fully grasp what happened back then, but last week my oldest looked up from his homework and said, "Mom, you're kind of like a rocket. You went down real fast, but then you went way higher than before." He doesn't know I still carry their little card in my blazer pocket. Every single day, every single meeting, every single deal. I'm not sharing this so y'all feel bad for me. I'm sharing this because somebody reading this right now is sitting in their own version of that parking garage, hands shaking, chest burning, wondering how someone they trusted could gut them that cold without even blinking. Here's what I know now. People who destroy you publicly already recognize your power. That's exactly why they can't do it quietly. They need witnesses because they need to humiliate you so deeply you'll never stand back up. Stand back up. Build the table they threw you out from. Build it bigger. Build it better. Build it yours. And when those same people come knocking later, begging for a seat, you decide who sits down.
The judge's face drained of color as he stared at the documents trembling in his hands. Security officers burst into the San Diego courtroom, rushing forward as chaos erupted around us. My family sat frozen in their seats, their smug confidence shattering in an instant. Just moments earlier, they had been demanding full control over everything I owned, claiming I was too irresponsible to manage my own life or raise my daughter properly. Their lawyer had promised them an easy victory. But now, as the room descended into stunned silence, I felt a cold satisfaction wash over me. The secret I'd guarded for years was finally out in the open. The truth about my real success, the empire I'd built from nothing, was about to dismantle their greedy scheme once and for all. My name is Brianna Vaughn. I'm a single mom raising my 6-year-old daughter Haley in a modest apartment near the San Diego coast, or at least that's what everyone thought they knew about me. 3 months before that explosive courtroom showdown, I came home after a long day running my small ecotourism business, thinking things were finally stable. But the second I walked through the door, everything changed. They were waiting for me, ready to turn my world upside down with a plan they'd been plotting in secret. They thought they had all the evidence to prove I was a failure, a reckless mother who couldn't be trusted with money or decisions. They had no idea how wrong they were. Have you ever had family members insist they know what's best for you and your child, even when it means taking everything away? How do you protect your independence when the people supposed to love you most try to control it? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this hits close to home, like the video, share it with someone who needs to hear that they are not alone in fighting for their freedom. Subscribe for more real stories about overcoming family betrayal, building strength as a single parent, and standing up when it matters most. Thank you for watching, and remember, no one has the right to take away your choices, no matter how much they claim it's for your own good. Stay strong. Growing up in the suburbs of San Diego wasn't easy for me. From my earliest memories, the house felt like a place where I was always on trial. My father, Edward Hayes, was a retired construction foreman who spent his days in the garage tinkering with old tools, but his real vice was hidden trips to the casino down the coast. He never said much, but his disapproval came in sharp glances and muttered comments about how I was too wild for my own good. My mother, Lorraine Hayes, worked part-time at a local boutique, always dressed impeccably, but her words cut deeper than any outfit could cover. She had this way of comparing me to everyone else, making sure I knew I fell short. Then there was my brother, Dominic Hayes, 5 years older and the golden child in their eyes. He was the one who got straight A's, played soccer on the school team, and landed a steady job at a bank right after college. Dominic loved to remind me of my place, teasing me about my messy room or my choice of friends. "You'll never amount to anything if you keep acting like that," he'd say with a smirk, as if my every mistake proved his superiority. The constant belittling made me retreat to the beach, where the ocean's rhythm offered an escape from the tension at home. School was no better. I was the kid with the second-hand clothes, while Dominic had the latest sneakers. Lorraine would pack his lunches with care, but mine were afterthoughts. Edward praised Dominic's report cards at dinner, but mine were met with silence or criticism. "Why can't you be more like your brother?" Mom would ask, her tone laced with disappointment. It built a wall between us when I tried to climb by excelling in art classes, drawing scenes of the San Diego coastline that no one at home appreciated. The real turning point came when I was 19. I had just started community college, trying to figure out my path, when I found out I was pregnant. The news hit the family like a storm. Edward slammed his fist on the dinner table, his face red with anger. "This is what happens when you don't listen," he growled, insisting I wasn't ready to be a mother. Lorraine cried for days, but her tears quickly turned to demands. "You have to think about your future," she said, pushing me toward options that would fix the situation. They both pressured me to give up the baby, saying it would ruin my life and embarrass the family.
Dominic just shook his head, calling me selfish for even considering keeping it. The arguments lasted weeks, with Edward refusing to look at me and Lorraine whispering about how I'd disgraced them. But I couldn't do it. Something inside me knew this child was mine to protect. I moved out that week, crashing on a friend's couch near the beach until I could afford a tiny studio apartment. Haley was born 6 months later, a beautiful girl with wide eyes and a laugh that made everything worth it. Being a single mom at 20 was exhausting. Nights spent rocking her to sleep while studying online, days juggling temp jobs at tourist spots along the San Diego coastline. I learned to budget every penny, skipping meals so she could have formula, and walking miles to save on bus fare. The isolation was crushing. Family holidays became awkward phone calls with Lorraine, asking if I needed help in a way that felt like judgment. Haley's first steps happened in that cramped apartment, her tiny hands grabbing furniture as I cheered her on. I took her to the beach for picnics, teaching her to build sandcastles while I dreamed of a better life. To make ends meet, I started offering informal eco-tours to friends, short walks explaining the local marine life. It was my passion, born from those childhood escapes to the shore, where I'd collect shells and imagine a world beyond the suburbs. The family distanced themselves after that. Edward stopped calling. Lorraine sent occasional cards with passive-aggressive notes about choices having consequences, and Dominic acted like I didn't exist unless it was to boast about his promotions. They saw me as the failure, the one who had thrown away potential. But in those quiet moments by the ocean, watching Haley play in the sand, I found strength. The waves crashing against the shore reminded me that life could be relentless, but I could endure.
I enrolled in online courses on business and sustainability, determined to prove them wrong on my terms. Years passed and I scraped by. Haley grew into a curious 6-year-old full of questions about the sea creatures we saw on our walks. I enrolled her in a local preschool, paying with what little I earned from freelance gigs guiding small eco-tours, simple kayak trips, highlighting the sustainable beauty of the bays. It was nothing fancy, just me sharing my love for the environment with a few locals and tourists. Haley would tag along, sometimes her little life jacket bobbing as she pointed at dolphins. Then, 4 years ago, everything shifted. My grandfather, the only family member who had ever believed in me, passed away. He left me an inheritance of $30,000, money he had saved from his days as a fisherman. Edward and Lorraine dismissed it as pocket change, but to me, it was a lifeline. I invested it wisely, starting a small business focused on ecotourism. I called it Coastal Harmony Tours, offering guided hikes through protected wetlands and kayak adventures that emphasized conservation. At first, it was just me and a rented boat, promoting on social media and word of mouth. I kept things low-key, living in our modest one-bedroom apartment, overlooking the beach to avoid drawing attention. Haley came along on some tours when I couldn't find a sitter, learning about tide pools and endangered birds. The business grew slowly. First, a few repeat customers, then partnerships with local hotels. I hired a part-timer to handle bookings, expanded to include sunset paddles and educational workshops for schools. Challenges came, like bad weather canceling tours or competitors undercutting prices, but I adapted, using free online tools to track finances and customer feedback. What no one knew was how successful it had become. Thanks to San Diego's booming tourism scene with its perfect weather and eco-conscious visitors, revenue climbed steadily. I reinvested profits into better equipment and online marketing, turning Coastal Harmony into a network of guides covering multiple coastal spots. By last year, we were booking corporate retreats and international groups, but I maintained the facade of a struggling single mom. Why? Because sharing success with my family had always backfired. They'd twist it into proof of my luck rather than hard work. There were times I quietly covered small expenses for them, like sending anonymous gifts for birthdays, but I kept it minimal to avoid complications. Aunt Rosalind Hayes, my mother's sister, was the one neutral presence in all this. She lived a few miles inland, running a small flower shop, and occasionally checked in with texts or dropped off toys for Haley. She never took sides openly, but I could sense her sympathy during family gatherings. I'd reluctantly attend. "You're doing great with that little girl," she'd say quietly, away from the others.
Still, she stayed close to Lorraine, listening to the complaints without challenging them. Our conversations were surface level, about Haley's school or the weather, but I appreciated her not piling on the criticism. Through it all, the emotional toll weighed heavy. As a single mom, every decision felt like a battle, proving to myself that I wasn't the irresponsible label they'd stuck on me. I lay awake some nights, worrying if Haley would ever feel the sting of their judgment. But I pushed forward, building my life brick by brick.
The inheritance had given me independence, and the business provided security, even if I hid its true scale. Haley's smiles during our beach outings made the struggles fade, reminding me why I fought so hard. The daily routine became my anchor, waking early to prepare Haley's breakfast, dropping her at school, then heading to the marina for tours. I'd explain to clients how sustainable practices protected the kelp forests, feeling a sense of purpose. Afternoons were for paperwork in our apartment, with Haley drawing pictures of whales beside me. Evenings brought stories about ocean adventures, tucking her in with promises of more explorations. Looking back, those years forged my resilience. The family's disdain had taught me self-reliance, and motherhood had given me focus. But as the business thrived quietly, I sensed a shift in the air, a tension building from the suburbs where they lived. Their occasional calls started feeling probing, questions about money disguised as concern. I brushed it off, focusing on Haley and the next tour group. Little did I know that hidden strength was about to be tested in ways I never imagined. The probing questions turned into something more insistent. One evening, after putting Haley to bed, I received a call from Dominic. His voice carried that familiar tone of superiority as he asked about my finances outright. "Mom and Dad mentioned you got some money from Grandpa," he said casually. "How are you handling it? With the kid and all." I brushed it off, saying it was helping with the business, but the conversation lingered in my mind. Dominic had always been the one to sniff out opportunities, especially if they benefited him indirectly. It turned out he had gone behind my back to the family accountant, Philip Monroe, who had managed Grandpa's estate paperwork. Philip, an old friend of Edward's from his construction days, let slip details during a routine chat with Dominic about tax filings. Dominic pieced together the inheritance amount and immediately shared it with Edward and Lorraine over dinner at their suburban home. Edward's eyes lit up at the mention of $30,000, money he saw as a quick fix for his mounting casino debts. Lorraine nodded along, voicing her concern that I was squandering it on frivolous tours while neglecting proper stability for Haley. They wasted no time. Within days, Edward contacted a lawyer recommended by a casino acquaintance, Mitchell Donovan, known for handling family disputes involving financial guardianship. Mitchell assured them that given my status as a young single mother with an unstable startup, they had grounds to petition for conservatorship over my assets and even influence over Haley's welfare. "We can frame it as protection," Mitchell explained in their living room, spreading out forms. "Prove she's unfit to manage money or make decisions for the child." Lorraine teared up dramatically, agreeing it was for my own good. But they needed ammunition first. Dominic suggested hiring someone to dig deeper and create pressure.
They brought in Garrett Klein, a private consultant who specialized in business viability assessments, really a specialist in discreet sabotage. Garrett charged a hefty fee paid from Edward's dwindling savings and got to work immediately. He posed as a potential investor, contacting my key clients through anonymous emails and phone calls. To Mr. Leonard Baxter, owner of a major hotel chain partnering with Coastal Harmony for guest tours, Garrett spread rumors. "I've heard concerns about reliability, tours canceled last minute because the owner prioritizes personal life over commitments." He implied I was overwhelmed as a single parent, leaving Haley with unreliable sitters to chase bookings. The impact hit fast. Mr. Baxter called me personally, his voice hesitant. "Brianna, we've enjoyed the partnership, but we've received some troubling feedback about consistency. We're pausing new bookings until things stabilize." That contract alone represented 40% of my projected revenue. Other smaller clients followed, citing herd issues about safety protocols or scheduling conflicts that Garrett had fabricated by altering online reviews subtly. Bookings dropped sharply. I had to cancel group hikes and refund deposits, dipping into reserves meant for Haley's future.
The stress crept in relentlessly. Mornings became rushed as I explained to Haley why we couldn't afford her favorite cereal that week. She noticed my fatigue, asking why I stared at the computer so long after she went to bed. I balanced spreadsheets showing red numbers, calling suppliers to negotiate delays on equipment payments. Nights blurred into worry, how to keep the guides employed, how to shield Haley from the uncertainty. The apartment felt smaller, the ocean view a reminder of tours I could no longer run. Then came the family meetings. The first one was at their house in the suburbs, a forced Sunday dinner Lorraine insisted on for Haley's sake. I arrived with my daughter, hoping for normalcy, but the atmosphere was thick. Edward started mildly asking about the business slump I'd mentioned in a text. When I admitted challenges, Lorraine pounced. "See, this is why we're worried. You're spreading yourself too thin and Haley suffers." Dominic chimed in, listing examples from Garrett's reports, alleged complaints about me arriving late to pickups because of work. I defended myself, explaining market fluctuations and competition, but they dismissed it. "You're not thinking clearly," Edward said firmly. "We need to step in for the money and the child." They revealed the lawyer's plan casually, as if discussing weather. Mitchell Donovan had already drafted papers for conservatorship, claiming my impulsive spending and parenting proved incompetence. The second meeting escalated a week later, again at their place. Haley stayed with a neighbor this time. I sensed trouble. Lorraine pulled out printed emails, faked correspondences Garrett had planted showing client dissatisfaction. Dominic accused me of neglecting Haley's needs, citing a school note about her missing a field trip I'd forgotten amid the chaos.
"You're in over your head," he declared. Edward added, "Threats of court if I didn't voluntarily hand over financial control." And Rosalind attended that one, invited by Lorraine. She sat quietly at first, but Mom drew her in. "You remember how Brianna ran off back then, leaving us worried sick?" Lorraine prompted, exaggerating my move at 19. And Rosalind nodded reluctantly, sharing a story about me skipping family events post-pregnancy. "I just want what's best for Haley," she said softly, her words stinging because they came from someone I'd thought neutral. Lorraine used it to bolster their case, noting it for Mitchell. I confronted them directly. "This isn't concern, it's control. The business is mine, built from scratch." But they overwhelmed me with interruptions. Edward raising his voice about family money being misused, Dominic smirking at my defenses. Lorraine played the emotional cards, sobbing about fearing for Haley's future under my chaotic care. I left, shaken, driving home with hands trembling on the wheel. A third gathering followed soon after, more formal. Mitchell Donovan joined via video call, outlining the petition, control over inheritance remnants, business income, even approval for Haley's schooling. Garrett's report was cited, fabricated data showing declining revenue as proof of mismanagement. And Rosalind contributed more, recalling phone calls where I'd sounded stressed, interpreting it as instability. The room closed in. Their united front made me feel isolated, voices overlapping in accusation. The sabotage intensified. Meanwhile, Garrett escalated by contacting preschools anonymously, hinting at my unreliable schedule affecting pickups. Though nothing stuck, it added paranoia. I double-checked every interaction. Revenue plummeted further. I laid off the part-time on, handling all tours alone when possible. Haley asked why we ate simpler dinners, her innocent questions twisting the knife. Sleep evaded me, mind racing with ways to salvage contracts while fending off family pressure. They scheduled yet another meeting, pressing for my agreement to avoid court. Lorraine sent texts daily, mixing guilt with urgency. Dominic emailed helpful articles on single-parent failures. Edward called gruffly, demanding access to accounts temporarily. And Rosalind left voicemails echoing concerns, her involvement deepening under Lorraine's influence. I felt besieged on all sides, the business crumbling, home life strained, family turning hostile under the guise of love. Every canceled tour reminded me of their interference. Every judgmental message amplified the isolation. Haley's drawings of happy ocean adventures contrasted sharply with my growing anxiety, fueling determination to protect what I'd built. The pressure mounted relentlessly. The web tightened, but now I held the threads. Suspicion drove me to act swiftly. I arranged a discreet visit to Philip Monroe's office, arriving unannounced during his lunch hour.
He fidgeted when I mentioned the inheritance leak, his tie suddenly too tight. Dominic stopped by casually. Philip confessed after minimal prodding.
He said it was for tax advice, but Edward followed up, demanding full details to protect you from mistakes. The coercion was evident in his hesitant tone, old loyalties twisted into compliance. Philip handed over access logs showing when my records were shared, confirming the family's early involvement. I left with copies, mind racing through implications of their betrayal. Back home, I dove into my digital trails. Scanning email headers revealed anomalies, forwarded chains to masked addresses, timestamps aligning with client losses. One hacked message altered a proposal to Mr. Leonard Baxter, inserting false cancellation notices. Another embedded tracking code, likely Garrett Klein's work. The breaches explained the rumors. Someone had stolen sensitive data to fabricate unreliability. Heart-pounding, I ran scans, uncovering phishing attempts disguised as supplier invoices. I changed passwords immediately and installed security software, but the damage was already done. The violation felt personal, fueling a determination to uncover every layer. To expose more, I feigned vulnerability. Accepting Lorraine's next call, I suggested a casual dinner to talk things through. At a quiet spot near the marina, I activated my phone's voice memo app discreetly. Conversation flowed to finances. Edward joined midway via speaker. When I probed about their worries, he grumbled about costs. "Life's expensive these days," he said, then slipped. "That money from your grandpa could clear some burdens if handled right." Included, his admission hinted at debt, voice lowering as if wary. Lorraine redirected, but the recording captured the greed. Leaving, I replayed it, suspense growing with each listen. A few days later, Dominic texted for a quick chat. I agreed to a beachside walk, recorder ready. As waves lapped, he criticized my priorities. "You're acting like you don't need us," he snapped. Pushing gently, I drew out resentment. "I've slaved at the bank while you played tour guide. It's unfair." His gentai surfaced raw, admitting envy over my self-made path. The confession ended abruptly. He stormed off, but I had his bitterness on tape. Alone on the sand, I felt a chill. His words revealed a sibling rivalry turned toxic. The pivotal piece came from a late-night call with Lorraine. I initiated it, pretending emotional fatigue. She responded with advice, revisiting old wounds. "We only wanted what's best back then," she sighed, then revealed. "Pushing you to end the pregnancy was tough, but we feared you'd regret it." Her words exposed lingering control, mixing remorse with justification. I hung up, trembling, the buildup of revelations heightening my dread. The recordings painted a picture of calculated manipulation, each one adding tension to the unfolding plot. With fragments in hand, suspense built as I realized the full scheme. But I needed an ally. I met Aunt Rosalind at her flower shop one afternoon, playing select clips privately. Her expression shifted from curiosity to horror. Edward's debt reference stunned her. Lorraine's confession brought tears. "They used me," she murmured, eyes wide at Dominic's jealousy. The twist hit her, loyalty shattered. She pledged discreet aid. "I'll testify if needed." Her shift provided hope amid turmoil, a rare crack in the family's united front. The emotional weight intensified. Listening to the tapes again, anger surged at Edward's selfishness, sorrow at Lorraine's revelations, disappointment in Dominic's spite. Family bonds, once unbreakable, now felt like chains. Haley's innocent hugs reminded me of the stakes, amplifying the guilt. Love for relatives clashed with the need to sever ties for our safety. Finally, I met Vanessa Rhodes at her firm, a sharp attorney specializing in guardianship cases. Laying out the evidence, I watched her analyze. "These recordings show conspiracy," she noted, outlining a defense strategy. As we planned, inner conflict raged. Anger at betrayal warred with sorrow over family fractures. Vanessa's confidence steadied me, but doubts lingered. Confronting them meant irreversible damage. Preparing for battle, I fortified my resolve. The suspense of what lay ahead palpable in every breath. The pieces aligned, ready for the storm. The courtroom doors closed behind me. The San Diego courthouse buzzed with anticipation as the hearing commenced. Judge Theodore Grant presided with stern authority, his gaze sweeping the packed room. Mitchell Donovan opened confidently, portraying my family as devoted guardians, rescuing a wayward single mother.
Edward took the stand first, voice steady as he detailed concerns over my parenting. He claimed I prioritized tours over Haley's stability, citing missed school events amid work demands. Lorraine followed, dabbing eyes while describing my reckless use of inheritance funds on equipment, framing it as neglect for Haley's needs. Dominic's testimony amplified the narrative. He recounted observing my exhaustion, interpreting it as inability to balance motherhood and business. Mitchell guided him expertly, introducing Garrett Klein's report as evidence of unsustainable operations, declining bookings painted as poor judgment.
The judge nodded thoughtfully at their unified front, questioning my choices pointedly. Vanessa Rhodes cross-examined, highlighting inconsistencies, but the damage accumulated. By day end, the tide leaned heavily their way. Judge Grant's tone suggested skepticism toward my independence. Despair crept in as recess hit. I gripped Vanessa's arm, whispering fears of losing everything. Day 2 resumed with continued pressure. Mitchell called a final witness to reinforce patterns of impulsivity, building on yesterday's momentum. The room felt oppressive. Edward smirked subtly from his seat. Lorraine clutched tissues. Dominic avoided my eyes. Vanessa remained composed, but I sensed the uphill battle. As Mitchell wrapped his case, the judge prepared remarks favoring intervention. Then Vanessa rose abruptly. "Your Honor, we have critical evidence of fraud." She requested permission to play recordings, citing legal collection under California law. Judge Grant allowed it cautiously. The first clip, Edward's dinner slip about debts, echoed through speakers. His face paled. Lorraine shifted uncomfortably. Mitchell objected vigorously, but the judge overruled, demanding context. Vanessa played the next, Dominic's beachside envy admission. My brother's composure cracked, hands clenching. The courtroom murmured. Judge Grant leaned forward, expression hardening. Lorraine's call followed, her pregnancy pressure confession, drawing gasps. She buried her face, sobs genuine this time. Tension escalated. Mitchell stammered protests, claiming fabrication. The peak arrived unexpectedly. Aunt Rosalind entered unannounced, requesting to speak. Granted permission, she approached the stand, trembling. I was misled, she stated clearly, apologizing directly to me. She corroborated the recordings, detailing Lorraine's manipulation of her statements. They twisted my words for their gain. Drama surged. Lorraine reached out pleadingly, but Aunt Rosalind held firm, exposing family coercion. Judge Grant demanded explanations. Garrett Klein, present as expert, faced grilling over his methods. Fabricated reports now undermined. He deflected poorly, sweating under scrutiny. Mitchell Donovan's poise faltered as implications of coaching surfaced. The judge halted proceedings briefly, voice thundering for order amid rising chaos. Revelations mounted relentlessly. Vanessa tied clips to sabotage evidence, proving orchestrated downfall. Edward muttered denials. Dominic stared blankly. Lorraine wept openly. The shift was palpable. Judge Grant's earlier lean reversed, anger evident at deception. My despair transformed into guarded relief, the high drama peaking as truth dismantled their facade. Garrett and Mitchell faced direct accusations, objections overwritten. The courtroom hung on every word, internal family rifts laid bare for all. The accusations lingered in the air. Judge Theodore Grant slammed his gavel for silence, his face flushed with outrage at the exposed fraud. "In light of this evidence," he declared sharply, "I require full financial disclosure from Miss Vaughn before any ruling." Vanessa Rhodes nodded, handing over a sealed envelope thick with documents. The judge opened it methodically, eyes scanning pages as the courtroom held its breath. At first, confusion crossed his features, then surprise widened his eyes. He flipped back, rereading sections, voice rising as he summarized aloud. "These records show Coastal Harmony Tours as a holding entity for expanded eco-operations across Southern California." He paused, glancing at me. "Annual revenue exceeding $2.8 million last year alone." Murmurs rippled. Mitchell Donovan shifted uneasily. I confirmed calmly. "Yes, Your Honor. What started as small kayak trips grew into partnerships with resorts, corporate wellness programs, and international eco-groups.
The judge continued, detailing property holdings: a beachfront cottage in La Jolla valued at $450,000, rental cabins near wetlands generating steady income, and a central office hub in downtown San Diego worth over $1 million. Multiple investment portfolios, he added, with liquid assets around $2 million and diversified funds. Gasps echoed louder. Edward leaned forward, face ashen. Lorraine clutched the table edge, whispering denials. Dominic stared at the papers as if they burned. The revelation hit them visibly. The modest single mom they portrayed was a multi-million-dollar entrepreneur. Vanessa presented more charitable contributions. Miss Vaughn has donated over $100,000 annually to single mother support networks and coastal conservation funds. Judge Grant raised eyebrows, including scholarships for young parents and emergency aid programs. I nodded. Grandpa taught me responsibility means giving back. But the bombshell waited. Vanessa revealed bank trails, anonymous payments to Edward's creditors, covering casino losses for 4 years, totaling $90,000, arranged discreetly to prevent home foreclosure, she explained. The judge's voice boomed. You've been secretly supporting your parents' household while they plotted against you. Silence shattered. Edward stammered. We had no clue. His admission hung heavy, desperation cracking his facade. Lorraine broke down, sobs turning hysterical. It was for your good, she pleaded futilely. Dominic muttered excuses about fair shares, voice trailing as reality sank in. Their scheme collapsed spectacularly. The irresponsible daughter had been their unseen savior. Judge Grant's fury peaked. This petition isn't protection, it's exploitation. He denounced the conspiracy, citing perjury risks for Garrett Klein and ethical breaches for Mitchell Donovan. The court dismisses this conservatorship with prejudice. Penalties followed swiftly: substantial fines payable to legal aid for abused families, mandatory gambling addiction counseling for Edward, restricted contact orders barring access to my finances or Haley without supervision. The emotional explosion overwhelmed. Edward slumped defeated. Lorraine wailed apologies no one believed. Dominic avoided gazes. Resentment turned inward. Their greed had backfired catastrophically, exposing dependence on the independence they sought to strip. I sat composed outwardly, but inside relief surged. Years of hidden effort validated in one reversal. Judge Grant addressed me directly. Miss Vaughn, your achievements as a businesswoman and mother are remarkable. This court apologizes for the ordeal. Security escorted Mitchell and Garrett amid investigations. The family sat broken, world upended by truths they never suspected. The climax crested as bailiffs cleared the room. Their confident plot lay in ruins. My empire illuminated for all. Life reshaped itself in the months that followed. Legal repercussions unfolded steadily. Mitchell Donovan faced Bar Association review, his license suspended pending fraud charges. Garrett Klein settled civil claims quietly, his reputation ruined. Edward attended mandated counseling sessions, fines draining what remained of their savings.
The restraining orders stood firm, no contact without court approval, protecting Haley and me from further interference. Emotionally, the rupture was absolute. I blocked numbers, changed locks on properties, and instructed staff to deny inquiries. Lorraine sent letters pleading forgiveness, but I returned them unopened. Dominic attempted emails justifying actions as tough love, yet I deleted without reply. Edward's silence spoke volumes, pride shattered beyond repair. The cut was permanent. No reconciliation felt possible after such calculated harm. Aunt Rosalind remained the exception. Sporadic calls about Haley kept a fragile tie, her remorse genuine. With freedom secured, I channeled energy forward. Coastal harmony expanded thoughtfully, new routes along lesser-known coves, collaborations with marine biologists for educational series. Revenue grew sustainably, funding upgrades like eco-friendly vessels. Haley thrived in a better preschool, her world filled with stable routines and beach adventures. The experience ignited a deeper purpose. I founded the Vaughn Resilience Fund, a nonprofit in San Diego dedicated to single mothers facing family financial abuse. Initial seed money from my reserves launched at legal aid grants, emergency housing support, workshops on boundary setting. Within half a year, we assisted dozens. One woman escaped coercive relatives, another protected inheritance for her children. Partnerships with local shelters amplified reach, offering counseling tailored to manipulation recovery.
Speaking engagements followed at women's conferences and university panels. I shared fragments of the ordeal, emphasizing self-reliance over toxic ties. Audiences connected deeply. Stories poured in from attendees enduring similar pressures. The fund hosted free seminars on asset protection, teaching young parents to document boundaries early. Haley inspired the children's program activities, fostering confidence for kids in single-parent homes. Personal growth anchored everything. Mornings with Haley became sacred. Breakfast chats about her drawings, evening walks collecting shells. I invested in therapy, processing layers of resentment and grief. The betrayal clarified priorities. Haley's security above outdated loyalties. Success felt fuller, unshadowed by secrecy. The core lesson crystallized over time. Family claims don't justify control. Cutting ties, though painful, unlocked true autonomy. Protecting children sometimes means shielding them from those who birthed you. Independence isn't selfishness, it's survival, modeled for the next generation. Have you faced pressure from loved ones disguising greed as care? How did you safeguard your path and your kids? Share in the comments. I read them all. If this story moved you, like and pass it on to someone battling similar chains. Subscribe for more on rising as single parents, enforcing boundaries, and thriving beyond betrayal. Thank you for joining my journey. Remember, sever if necessary, for freedom, for your child, for the life you deserve.